And we're live.
All right, I'm recording.
From the industrial wastelands of Michigan to the fruited plains of Iowa, this is the American Green Factory.
You are the dead. Remain exactly where you are. Make no move until you are ordered.
We burn them to ashes and then burn the ashes. That's our official motto.
Now we can see you. Clasp your hands behind your heads. Stand out in the middle of the room. Stand back to back.
Who can explain the fascination of fire? What draws us to it, whether we're young or old?
Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head.
And welcome to the American Green Factory podcast. This is Nathan.
This is Colin.
Enter.
Gang's all here. Well, most of it. 1/3. Or no, 2/3. I don't know.
3/4.
3/4. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 3/4.
Fucking imperial measurement.
Fuck you every time.
Oh, yeah. Too complicated. But anyway, here we are.
Did I ever give my spiel about like how actually Fahrenheit is better than Celsius?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh. Because like, well, I know like Celsius works better for science, or actually probably Kelvin does. So in Celsius, you know, it's 15 degrees out. It's like, is that cold? Is that hot? Or what is?
Yeah.
But like in the actual temperature that like we live in is like from 0 to 100 and increments up by 10. And so at every 10 increments, you know how hot or cold it is outside.
Yeah.
So for Fahrenheit and what the system we actually use for what we live in, it actually makes more sense because you're actually working on 0 to 100.
Yeah. There's a reason we kept it.
Yeah.
Us and who? Guam? Who else does imperial? Oh, the British kind of do both.
Canada does both. Yeah.
Oh, do they? Do they do
Yeah,
both? Okay.
yeah.
Because I know sometimes you'll be listening to the news, and if it's from like the BBC or something, they'll refer to it in miles and kilometers. Sometimes if they're talking about like horrible accidents. Nobody else does. So let's see, what do we got going on this week in the news? I kind of talked that out last week. Really nothing new to talk about that I can think of. I mean, no bills are passing, nothing's moving forward. So
That lady's now in Europe doing things. Miss Cinema.
cinema, yeah. Steve Bannon's going to get arrested for refusing to show up and testify. But yeah, that's about. I haven't heard anything too dramatic. I mean, I will. I'm sure. I mean, there's always something coming. More police are dying from coronavirus than gun violence now for the first time in America's history.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I bet you can attach that to just about anything. Like, I'm pretty sure it's probably killing more military members than. Well, it's probably eking out suicide. I don't know. I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, they had a memorial for police officers today, and somebody was throwing that figure out. I was like, really? I figured those guys would get shots like first responders, like they would be the first in line because they got to deal with random nutcases.
Oh no, it's whether they elect to do it or not, because they're the same assholes that are all those like macho bullshit anti-vaxxers, flat earthers, because it's all cased in macho bullshit.
Oh, are they oath promisers or whatever? Is that the What's the thing that the police are involved
basically.
in?
Was
It's
that Oath
something
Keepers? Oath Keepers.
Yeah, oath
And I think that was in Oregon. There was a story out of there about cops being associated with that.
And that's just like hard right fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I never looked into it. I just never.
No, like all this anti-vax stuff, it's all coaxed in like these, like military, police, and just gym macho bullshit. It's
okay.
So yeah, it's like that's why. And gun people too, all that stuff, all that car guys. They're just all it's just all full of garbage.
All the stuff that I kind of like, like guns and cars. Yeah, there's a lot of shit that goes along with it.
Yeah.
Take that vaccine. Don't be a pussy for the New World Order. I want to hear about a Mustang. What are you doing?
There's
no,
a fun.
Go ahead, shoot your gun. Just don't talk to me about your bullshit. I want to see the gun shoot. I don't want to hear about how our dicks are going to fall off. Take a vaccine.
And it's also always weirdly coaxed in religion, but they don't believe in it. They just like the sense of people believing highly of them. So actually, what's going on here is like this is virtue signaling that they don't know that they are doing. So like assholes who like have like giant flags on their truck to show how American they are.
Right.
And then they're obviously like are speeding and breaking the law and like rolling coal and doing all that stuff and being bad citizens. They are virtue signaling because they think that makes them look cool and be good people, but they are not.
Oh. I always thought rolling coal was just a good way to burn the and manifold off your engine. Keep doing that, guys. No, I guess I never. Well, I always assume like a level of intelligence with police and firemen and stuff that maybe I'm just being too generous. I don't, because I assume like, oh, these guys are dying because, I mean, why aren't they getting their shots? And it's like, oh, I forgot. There's a whole weird thing with people that they think something's going to happen that hasn't happened to millions of Americans.
Well, as we know, the cops are poorly trained, so.
Well, also, like half of Chicago's police department's about to go on unpaid leave because they won't get the vaccination.
Oh, that'll end in glory. If Chicago's police department isn't present, that'll be the that's what's that lady's name that runs the city? The mayor.
Fuck, I don't even know the mayor of Chicago's name anymore.
She's a really odd lady, and yeah, she'll be, because they say she's like the worst mayor of a big city in America. And let me look her up, because I don't want to name someone.
There's
the
a
worst
funny
mayor of a big city in America and not know their name.
There's somebody put up a video where like some lady was like talking about like, why aren't all the homeless dead in the streets from coronavirus? It's a lie. And then some homeless guy's walking by. It's like, because I'm vaccinated, you dumb bitch.
Nice.
Yeah, it's free. It's not like it's a cost or anything. All you have to do is walk in and fucking like, I want a vaccine. Okay.
Yeah, people act like they should put like $1,000 barriers up, and then watch the conversation turn there. Yeah, if it like costs money, all the right wingers would get it. Yeah, I'm not poor. Yeah, I put my vaccine on a MasterCard. Oh, Lori Lightfoot, by the way, is the mayor of Chicago, and yeah, she is an odd duck. So that's
but a great healer in a D&D game.
Yeah,
I don't know if she's
name, like, is she an elf?
Not odd as a duck as the lieutenant governor of Idaho that keeps trying to put in like fucking mandates and shit like that, like executive orders when the other governor leaves the state, because the state charter is the lieutenant governor is in charge of the state when the governor leaves the state. So every time he leaves the state, once last year, once this year, she posts like no vaccine and no mask ordinance. And we're going to take back the streets for the United States citizen and shit.
Okay.
People that get abortions should be killed. And
where is this?
The Idaho.
Oh, doesn't the actual governor of Idaho look like some crazed hillbilly?
No, he doesn't look like a crazy hillbilly. She put out a video where she had like a gun in her hand and a Bible in the other hand in her fucking truck. And she's talking about the Second Amendment rights of the United States and shit like that. And this was a couple years ago.
There's been no laws passed since like Clinton was president. Like it's the same laws.
So I don't. She seems like a fucking fruitcake, just like most of the other like Lauren Boebert. God damn it, Boebert. That seems like a fucking retard that keeps like talking about shit that doesn't happen and making up shit and fucking. What's her name? That the crazy bitch is having an affair with people at her gym in Colorado too, and she's like fucking crazy.
Was
shit.
It Green?
Maybe I can't think.
She was it Marjorie Taylor Greene or something?
Oh yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her new ad is her blowing up a foreign car, the Barrett 50 decal and talking about being for America or whatever. That's her new political ad.
Yeah,
Cool,
see?
that's the
Yes.
message.
See, that's virtue signaling.
I mean, I can understand the desire to blow up a car with a Barrett. I would do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wouldn't do is record it and put it out with my name under it about how, this is a great thing for
Well,
America.
we wouldn't do that and then follow it up with we're running for Senate.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not running for like office where I need security clearances because I'm going to be briefed in on important stuff. This is why I do like it when the House of Representatives, which has oversight over like clandestine operations and military stuff, when they get angry, it's like we're being cut out of the loop. It's like, yeah, some of the people you're affiliated with, I wouldn't trust them to buy their own lunch. I mean, how can we tell you about this?
I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene was taken off all of her committees. I think
Yeah.
she still is.
Yeah.
She should be kicked out because of what she's doing.
Yeah,
But
she
then
has
fucking
nothing.
Bo-
She has no work to do because she is not allowed to work on anything.
Because she is that crazy. She is like wore masks, talking about conspiracies and shit on her mask, and refused to wear it to the point where they had to threaten fines and be kicked out. So she finally wore it, and then fucking Gates.
Well, she like
should
takes
hopefully
if there's a camera around, she takes it off to play to her base, and then she puts it on when the cameras are down.
But like Boebert might lose her seat with the census, so hopefully she'll just be out anyway because her husband made like $700,000 a year off oil industry for being a lobbyist, and she hid that. And she also used campaign funds for private use and a bunch of other shit she wasn't supposed to do that's illegal. So she didn't disclose. She should have lost her seat for that, but as far as I know, nothing will come of it. And then Gates should lose his seat because he's involved in a child sex ring right now, but nothing's coming of that either. So
It's a guy from
there's-
Florida.
yeah.
Okay, I think they're both from Florida, aren't they?
Maybe I can't remember where. I swear that Boebert's from Colorado and so is Green, but I don't even fucking know anymore because Boebert's a senator and I think Green's a congresswoman. So I mean, I wish Hinson would get fucking shit canned because she's a crazy batshit retard too. But she'll probably.
Now, are these
fucking-
people really crazy batshit, or are they just playing it for the crowd? Like, with some of these, I know
mean,
some of these people actually believe this stuff, but it seems to be so widespread that people are putting weird, like politicians putting weird stuff out on Twitter, and I mean federal politicians. It's like, did they believe this stuff 10 years ago? Because some of these people have been around for a while. It's like, did they always believe this? Is this just circuses for the crowd, or is this real? I don't know.
Well, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's the one that before office she had like the Jewish space laser causes wildfire thing on Facebook or some shit.
That's good. That's well founded.
Other than that, like fucking, I was just watching a thing about this guy that died in South Carolina that was like a hound trainer or whatever for hunting and breeding and shit, and he died of internal bleeding. His wife had dementia, and so his apprentice, somebody took in to try and teach the craft and shit, showed up with his family and friends and started robbing the house blind. And thankfully, they were dumb enough to talk in front of his security cameras, had audio and video the whole entire time they were doing it for a couple days. Because his sister lived 12 hours away, so she had to fucking book it there because they called her and said that he had died. And then a probate judge that hadn't been sworn in yet also showed up and started looting the place and just taking like bags. He had like bags of cash, guns, $2,000 with a dog collar.
In the video, yeah,
It's
the collars are the thing they mentioned in the video. They're like GPS collars. I'm not sure if they're dog collars or, well, you said there was the raised hounds, but
It's like they're like hunting collars, so the radio and GPS and all this other shit on them. So it's $2,000 for like the 30 collars he had there, and they showed the list of who owned them and shit, and like pretty much most of them were belonging to the deceased. And they were trying to find a will the entire time so they could like get that and change it. And like so the person taking care of his wife like told the sister when she arrived like, hey, they've been stealing shit out of here, truck keys, bag of cash, like a big gallon bag of cash or whatever, and just like a bunch of shit, like all the jewelry was gone and all this other stuff. And so she contacted them and they brought back like some of the money and like the truck keys and shit, and that was pretty much it. So there's still all this shit missing that they can't find. They fired the caretaker and appointed another one. And now, like, it seems like the apprentice and his family, like, they're going to probably get away scot-free with everything because there's no open investigation, even though this happened last year at the local sheriff's department. And maybe the probate judge now that she's been sworn in 7 weeks after this, after she also tried to execute her roommate with pointing a gun at her head and got a traffic ticket for that a couple weeks after all this happened too. So she's under investigation by the Supreme Court in South Carolina and also by SLED, which is their task force or whatever. So she has 2 charges maybe being brought against her for the gun thing and also for possibly stealing shit from a house on camera with witnesses and shit.
This sounds like a really stable, nice place full of wonderful people.
Well, because this is on Reddit when I found out, or Common was watching it, probably YouTube maybe, but at the same time, like all the comments were just like, oh yeah, people do this shit all the time. They see that people died, so they go and rob their house while people have a funeral. Like,
well, what the title's supposed to really catch was that it was a judge doing it, but I guess you said it was a judge that wasn't a probate judge, so they weren't appointed.
Because the shitty part was like they go interview her boss because they're like, oh, we just want to get her side of the story. And he's like, she did nothing wrong. It's like he knows everything about this. Like she, was on video doing all this, talking about it on video. Like she took a handgun and all this other stuff, and he's still defending her. And it's like, oh, she might lose her job. It's like, well, I think he should lose his job too if he knows all about this and he's still going to defend her and appoint her to a judgeship. Because she talked to the sister when she got there, and she's like, I'm your probate judge, so I'm handling all this. I'm here to work for you, and in the meantime, stealing everything. So it's like, Jesus Christ.
Earl, we found Jim Bob's corpse. We'll check his wallet. I'm not stealing his wallet. No, get his address so we can rob his house. Oh, and his sister's there, and her brains are scrambled. Let's do something with her too. We got to make sure to get all these GPS collars, which are only there to track things through satellites. Like they'll never catch us, and steal all his money. And and he's got cameras and Ring doorbells and guns that are all registered. Yeah, let's get all that stuff and get the local judge down here. She can help carry.
Well, because apparently she knew him because they used to work together at a different place years ago, and so
and they're working together again.
Yeah,
getting
the band back together.
I guess I was just more pissed off that you have idiots talking on video multiple times for hours of recordings, and you still can't be bothered. Like, there's not enough evidence to do anything with. I'm like, what kind of evidence do you need? Do they need to show up and then give a full affidavit and all the evidence with their fingerprints all over it?
It sounds like for the quality of justice they have down there, you could just get a Ouija board and try to talk to the dead and use that. For fuck's sake, they're doing it on camera. That's not good enough. Well, let's light a candle and start praying, and we'll get Jesus in on this.
Yeah, because it's just sad because it's not like he was dead and he had nobody else to support or whatever. He was dead and had his wife that had dementia that needed round-the-clock care and support. And, because they were trying to find the will because who knows where everything was supposed to go and who and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's just great. That woman doesn't need it anymore.
Just sounds like South Carolina is really trying to be Florida.
Yeah.
Well, they get a lot of influx from Florida, so that's where it's leading. But at the same time, it's just reading the comments and it's like, oh yeah, that happened to my uncle. His neighbors looted his house and stole and sold everything before his family could get there from a state away. And it was like, man, you gotta be real fucking horrible pieces of shit to be like, oh, he died. Let's go sell his truck, his ATV, get all of his guns, sell those. The only thing we couldn't sell was the house because that would take too long and legally be impossible. That's the only thing we didn't sell.
Can we jackhammer the house up from the ground and put that on a trailer? What happened? He died. Yeah, but why is there a fucking hole in the ground with nothing left? Well, that's our custom around here. Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it's severely depressing because it's like me and my wife are looking at each other and we're like, we're so glad you're not that much of an asshole. You would steal from fucking dead people. I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you're not an asshole that would steal from dead people too.
Yeah, we got our shit together here. Unless there was like a giant diamond buried in the backyard or something.
Well, unless it's like the apocalypse or something and it's all every man for themselves or something, that might be a little bit different occurrence.
Maybe for these people it is the apocalypse. It's like, well, we can do this. It says so in the Bible.
Oh, we had kind of a situation like that. Maybe because our family isn't like all terrible like that. We had something like that where basically we could walk into somebody's house and we could have taken whatever we wanted. It was there. Everybody's like, no, you take it. No, you take it. We like,
yeah.
They basically everything went up for auction because nobody took anything.
Yeah, that was people kept calling like, "Hey, are you in?" No, I'm not. Sell it and divide it up. Divide up the proceeds. You need this in your house? No, I don't. And, I mean, it's not like it was like a golden sword or something. Like, do you want the golden sword? Yes. Yes. If no one else is taking it.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of nice furniture and TV
Yeah,
and stuff.
oh, yeah.
I got a bed out of it. It's a California. No, wait, no, it's a king size bed. It's way too big. But
And in another depressing news, there's the elementary kid arrest ring in fucking Tennessee that's going on right now. So it's like a cop.
oh, is that
like,
Tennessee?
40-something.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in Tennessee. The judge that took her.
Oh yeah, because I saw I
I
saw something about the judge where it's like, essentially. Well, I don't even know if it's true. It's basically a picture of the judge, and the title says something like for 5 years she was arresting black children for crimes that don't exist. Which it's like, well, I should probably look into that, and then I did not.
Well, so there's two people involved in this case. There's the female police officer that's had 40-some complaints and suspended multiple times. She's the one that arrested like 60 students or something like that, all for witnessing a fight and not stopping it, which isn't a thing. And so 12 or 15 of them were sentenced by that judge because they were black. The youngest one was 8 that also threw up while she was being arrested. Because, you know, handcuff an 8-year-old and put her
Slam
in
them to the
fucking
ground. They could be a danger.
So this woman for 20 years she's like one of the highest conviction rates for minors in fucking her state and also the country. But she's also on the board of the prison. So, you know, she took her 9 years and 5 tries to pass the bar, and then she was made a judge in 3 years. And she sentences these kids because it'll help their lives, and they're majority African American.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that's already a thing because I've like read horror stories of like a teenager criticized her principal on social media, so she got 2 years in jail, and it's like, Jesus Christ, it's like that's a thing. Fucking hell, like that's fucking stupid. Why the hell would anybody sentence anybody to that shit? I can criticize somebody on social media. I don't.
This
give a
seems
shit.
like super small town South stuff.
It should be, but I don't think.
Or it seems like this should be illegal. It's like, well, that's because nobody's watching. The people in charge are corrupt.
Is this a Stephen King story or the South? Which one is it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's just the same thing with my wife was watching like the "they'll kill you" videos on YouTube because she likes those. They're kind of entertaining sometimes. So it was like a cop that was doing the same thing. She would see a notice in the paper that somebody died, so she'd wait till the funeral and then go burgle her house. And so, like, if anybody caught her, she would just like say she was there for a Facebook transaction, and somebody came home early and caught her in the middle of it, and she was like, "What? There's no Facebook sale going on here today? I'm with the sheriff's department, by the way. I'm here to help you clean the house and blah 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 blah." And it's like, man, you don't think on your feet very well. Here from the sheriff's department, here to help you clean your house. This is how we do things.
There's a lot more higher paying, low risk ways to be a corrupt cop than that. Make friends with a local drug dealer. It's like, well, I'll never arrest you unless I'm ordered to.
Yeah, it could be the guys that live in civil forfeiture states and just take whatever they want during arrest.
Yeah.
I want an iPod. I'll take that. You must have had crack on you. I don't know what you're talking about. Because there was literally an investigation. I can't remember what state it was, where it's like, the cops wanted these cars, so they just stopped people with those cars and made up shit, seized the car, and took it. And they never got questioned about why they kept stopping people. Like, oh, I took this Corvette off this guy.
Yeah, I need a Hellcat.
So yeah, everything's always bad, really bad, all the time bad. I don't know why anybody thinks different. Maybe that's why people are Republicans. But at the same time, I don't know. Because that was my wife's reasoning between why her brother is always such a shitheel most of the time and always brings everybody down. Is because he's always seen shit as a prison guard and working at Ghetto B and shit. That he's always seen bad sides, so he can't be a good person. It's like, yeah, maybe, but I've seen a lot of fucked up shit too. I've been sexually assaulted. Didn't make me a bad person. It's like, I've also fucking stole shit when I was a minor, but that was just like petty shit, and I paid it all back and regret it now. But at the same time, not a fucking bad person because of that. Like, you can change, but some people that like steal from the dead can't. Probably, I don't know.
Well, if you want to apologize, just pray. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that too.
Oh
Did
man.
anybody see like the way they like explained it or whatever? I was on Netflix. So it was breaking down an apology, like how an apology has changed, especially with like Me Too movement and stuff like that. Where it used to be you actually had to mean it, now it's just like you can basically just cram a bunch of bullshit in there and say a couple words that all fit the same pattern. And it's
Well, yeah, because now an apology is like a legally like
Yeah.
prosecutable
Certain
thing.
criteria. My favorite
Well, yeah.
apologies is when you did something wrong to someone else, and then you make it about yourself. But it's an apology. I love like hearing that, and these people think it's like, oh, I'm doing the right thing here. It's like, no, you're some kind of psycho now. You're just proving that you're crazy. It's,
I'm
like,
sorry you were
apologize.
offended, but I'm really the victim here.
I only set that man on fire because I didn't have enough money to buy a Big Mac. It's not my fault. Anybody would do the same thing if they were put in my shoes.
Anybody would do that.
Anybody from Florida?
So I mean,
I was
it's
watching.
just-
We were watching this thing. It's called Neighborhood Wars. It's about things that security cameras catch. And there was this woman in Florida, and her daughter were in this like, it was a bunch of apartments, but they were like walk-ups, like they weren't multi-storied. So they were just in a square, and some dude was just walking around with a can of gas, and walked by the ring thing, and they got all the ring cameras that caught him all the way to this lady's front door, and then he just pours like a half a gallon of gas on her front door, lights it on fire, and runs away. And I was like, oh, what is this, like angry boyfriend or whatever? But this was an older lady and a really young guy, and the neighbor ran out and caught him and like beat him to the ground. And I said, oh, this screams Florida, and it was. And why he did it? He had no connection with this woman. Didn't know anything about her or anyone else who lived there that the police could prove. He just wanted to go light somebody's apartment on fire. I was like, "Yep, this is Florida. This is what goes on there."
Yeah, because I've nicknamed Florida home of the revenge fire, but apparently revenge was the motive here.
It's home of any crazy crime that'll make good headlines. That's
Well,
all
maybe
it
in
is.
his mind it was some kind of revenge.
Yeah.
I don't know, because they put these out so fast, like they don't have like, oh, this is what happened where he was sentenced. It's like, no, this could have happened last month. There's no production value, and it's just coming off a ring camera. The only production they got to do is go interview the people. So why this fucktard do this? We don't know. He just did it.
Yeah, I was listening to a wrestler talk about, I think it's called dissociative schizophrenia or something like that.
Okay.
When you think objects are talking to you, so you're like, I'm not crazy. That lamp is crazy.
That's a great fucking excuse for everything. That's so much better than the I don't know defense.
Wasn't it in Son of Sam? You have some
Yeah,
version
yeah,
for
yeah.
that where it's like, no, it wasn't me. It was the neighbor's dog telling me to do this shit. Or
Yeah, but he listened to the voices.
yeah.
These are people that are plagued by, objects they think are talking to them, but trying their best not to listen to them.
I heard a weird thing that oral hallucination, like you hear things, schizophrenia no, but I mean when
Sorry.
you actually hear voices and stuff, but there's no like, you're just hearing them in your head. Only in the West do they suggest like, kill your neighbors, kill them, they're out to get you. I guess in the Middle East and India and China, like the schizophrenic voices are like, relax, calm down, lay down, don't work today.
Yeah.
But it's only in the West where it's like, kill, you are the son of God, kill. It's like, maybe there's something wrong with our culture.
I mean, that's fascinating, like cultural differences for the same mental
Yeah,
illness.
same exact problem.
And they just want them not to go to work and sit on the couch and be depressed
Yeah,
all day.
pretty much.
But, I mean, that's a way better outcome, in my opinion.
Well, it's
But-
frightening because you're hearing voices and no one's there. Like, that would be weird even if they're like, chill out, bro. Like, what? It would be the opposite of relaxation for me, but I would rather hear that voice than they're all trying to fuck you. You must destroy them now. It's like, who? The lady who walks on a peg leg at the office? I don't think she's trying to kill. No, they're trying to kill you.
If I kill them, will you stop talking? No.
This is God. Bob, this is God. But yeah, that's like, I read that and I was like, wait, is that true? So I just followed up on it, and yeah, it's true. I mean, there's study. I mean, you can't really like measure the hallucinatory voices that people are hearing. There's
Yeah.
no metrics for that. but the results in terms of like violence and outcomes are way different.
Mm.
Sometimes the people in the village will just be like, well, that's his thing, and we're going to work around that because we got to live here. And everyone knows everyone in a lot of those places because they all grew up in this, especially India. It's people pretty much stay where they grew up, and it's like, yeah, that's just a thing with him. You got to put up with that. He'll be fine. But because he's not going at people with the wheat thresher, I guess you can work with it. It's when the guys in America get a hold of like axes or firearms, then it really goes off the rails.
Or as we learned in Norway this week, a bow and arrow.
Yeah, that was weird.
Well, the fact that he was converted to Islam and radicalized and shit, and then attacked people with a bow and arrow, it's like, well, technically, I mean, he got his hands on what he could get his hands on, I guess. I don't know.
Guns in Norway.
Oh,
Well,
wasn't
Breivik prove that to us.
wasn't some British politician stabbed to death recently
Yeah, that
too?
happened.
Yeah, that happened yesterday, too.
He was meeting his constituents somewhere in East London, and he'd been in that job since he'd been in politics since '83. And everyone said he was he was a Tory. He was kind of a conservative guy, but everyone's like, he was a nice guy, and he always responded to what his people asked him for. And then some dude just showed up with a knife and stabbed him to death.
Because he was like, die. He's like, okay.
All right, good show.
Oh man,
No, because he
he did what I asked him to do. Now I can't vote for him.
It's so dark and weird. I heard it was a homemade knife too. I haven't got all the
Oh,
details
really?
yet.
Jesus.
That's
Why is
weird.
it? I know knives are more controlled in England, but that's weird that it's a homemade knife.
Well, I think it was something designed to do larger designed to do damage, but that could be bullshit too. It's all preliminary. The police over there don't release the crime scene photos the next day like they do here. It's a little more tame, so we might find out. I guarantee you, deep-seated mental illness was probably a strong component in this.
Yeah, probably. I mean, most political assassinations are nobody that usually doesn't talk to God or have some kind of complex actually tries to kill politicians.
Well, speaking of deep-seated mental illness and politics, did you watch the F1 race last week?
No, I didn't.
Nothing to do with that whatsoever. It's just just a transition. So we had
what assassination happened at F1? That's
no, apparently there was some crowd squeezing and people got hurt, which that's weird.
oh.
Apparently, I heard a weird, because usually the Turkish Grand Prix, the track that they're at is it's been used as a substitute for the last 2 years where races got canceled, so they ended up here because other races were canceled. And it has a F1 license, so they can race there. But apparently, a lot of the planning for the track is just awful. There are people who like the road to get to the parking lot to then get to the track. It was just all jammed up, so people just left their cars because it's quicker to walk to the track, leaving their cars there, than to just finish the drive.
Well, we're almost here, kids. Abandon ship.
The bus. Somebody tell a story because they were on a bus because they got on. There was a bus to take them to the track, and people were fighting the bus driver so they could be let off the bus so they could walk to the track instead of be in traffic. And then there's some, and then when the race was over, people trying to leave, they were squeezing them through gateways and stuff like that, and people were getting injured from that. Which that's a big thing in sports. I forget what it was, some British sports event. I think they call it the big squeeze, but it was just people pressed up against a fence.
Yeah,
and
it's a soccer match.
Yeah, but fucking 80 people
died.
Yeah, it was what?
In England?
It was just from being squeezed from a mass of people. Nobody died here, but it seemed like it sucked. But anyways, the race was it was a wild race, but then kind of nothing happened. It's there was no big changes really, the other wet, because it was another wet race, but it was one of the weirdest wet races where kind of nothing happened. It was another race this year where no cars retired from the race, which is almost never happens. Like it happens maybe once a year if that all happens. Like it's only ever happened like 13 times in the entire history of F1. It's happened twice this year. Technically 3 if you include Spa, where they didn't actually race. So like they had a wet qualifying, but it was like one of those qualifyings where like they put on soft tires like near the end, and like they were able to get the best times out of it. But then when they started it was more of a drying qualifying. But when they started the race, it was wet, so everybody's on intermediates because once it's wet, you can do that. And the track basically, like, it kind of dried, but then never dried. But it didn't really rain, but the track just never dried. Apparently, it was just really cold there. And so there never became a time where you could actually use normal tires because Sebastian Vettel attempted to use medium tires, and he was just skating all over the place. Because the thing was, like, so the intermediate tires are actually softer than the normal tires. So if you just race them on a normal track, they'll disappear really quickly. But if there's rain on the track, they'll cycle water through the treads and then they'll cool themselves, and so they don't deteriorate as fast. But there was a weird thing here is like you needed the grid pattern on it to race on the wet track. So then you could heat up the tires. Once you heated up the tires, you actually wore away the tread on the tire, and it kind of became a slick tire, like their normal tires. And that was the best time when these tires worked, is when you wore off the tread. It was actually, but because they're hot, they worked on the track. But you couldn't just get like you couldn't get a soft tire because you would never be able to get up speed to put heat in the tires to have it stick to the track. So, yeah. So everybody did at least one pit stop for another set of intermediates, and there was a weird time period where like when you got new tires, it was actually worse for you because Daniel Ricciardo was like one of the first to pit, and then they asked him, is like, do you think he'll be faster on new intermediates? He's like, yeah, definitely. And he comes in, and he immediately comes out, and he's not faster than he was before.
Yeah.
Carlos Sainz had a great race because he started from the back because he cut a bunch of new engines, but like that new Ferrari engine looks pretty good because he passed a lot of people on the wet track. It was like he was passing like a personal lap for like 6 laps, which is crazy in F1. That doesn't happen. But he's back there with, like all the Haas's and Williams. So, and then Ocon was able to go the whole track without pitting, or the whole race without pitting, because you can do that if the race is done on wet or intermediate tires. But he barely survived the race. There was like his tire, it looked like a blister had popped, and then like the top layer was gone, and you saw like some of the construction underneath. His tire was still inflated, but it was like, oh yeah, that thing was ready to blow because Hamilton didn't want to pit, and he had about like 10 laps to go. And they pitted him for safety, and he was in third because he took a penalty, so he had to start in 11th, and he was in third. And after he pitted, he came out in 5th, and then the tires weren't working that very well because they just don't at the start. And so he ended up in 5th, and so he was mad about that. He's like, I could have went the whole way, but it's like, I don't know, maybe not, because every Red Bull like team, like including AlphaTauri, were like giving Lewis Hamilton the hardest time to race. Like even Yuki Tsunoda like kept Hamilton at bay for like 8 laps. It was just blocking for Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen really didn't do anything the whole race. He just kind of stayed in second. Bottas ran pretty much a flawless race and won it, so it's probably going to be his last F1 win. But he looked really good that race. And because also, like, you said on here before, Bottas isn't great in wet races, and here he won one, so proved that wrong. But yeah, it was I don't know, it wasn't as usually wet races have all this crazy stuff happen, but this one didn't really have a whole lot of crazy stuff happen. It's kind of, but I guess that's a good thing in a way, for some safety reasons or whatever. But so Max Verstappen is ahead in the championship by 6 points. I think Mercedes is still ahead in the constructors, but Perez came in third, so he got a podium, he's been having a lot of bad races for like the last 6 races, so that was good for him. And now this week we got the U.S. Grand Prix and the Circuit of the Americas, so hopefully that'll be cool.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to watch that one if my internet's working. We've had they're doing a big upgrade around here to our internet, and so we like there's trucks parked in front of our house and everyone else's house, but yeah, like it's just like it's going to be down for like 9 hours. Like, oh, okay, I wish I would have known about that.
All right, with him hitting up on our time limit, so I will make a new call and call you guys back.
Alrighty.
Stand by.
Alright, I'm recording.
Okay, this
And we're back.
Here we are. So we watched a movie this week.
Movie that Andrew picked to watch, so maybe he.
Good.
maybe. I've only failed to watch one. Otherwise, like I've just disliked the ones we've been chosen.
No, I meant to say you picked it and maybe you'd like it.
Oh.
And then I stalled. I was like, maybe you won't.
Well, I mean, I watched since you have access to it, since you obviously own the account. I picked 3 movies to watch the first 15 minutes and see if I felt drawn to them at all, because reading the descriptions doesn't do it for me. I can't oh yeah, this sounds like it'd be a good movie. So I watched the first 15 minutes of Wolf's Hole. Sabata, I think, is what the other one is called. It's like a Japanese movie about a woman that cuts a man's penis off, and it's 2.5 hours long. Yeah, it's really interesting visuals and cool fucking shit, but I was like, it's so fucking weird and it's gonna take 2.5 hours for the payoff of dick cutting. And I'm like, I mean, it was made in 1990 or something, I think, 99, I think. So it's more recent. I was trying to pick something that was older because I seem to have a problem with watching older movies just because I don't like older movies. Probably, I don't know. But at the same time, so I picked this one because it's a spy movie, kind of in the spy movie mood, and I didn't think it was bad.
Eh?
So
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good movie from a good book. So
Because there's actually a couple of funny parts in this movie that I was really not expecting.
You mean like the entire ending?
Well, the entire ending, but also, you remember when the leader gets caught in the beginning and he's like, "No soldier will dare raise a gun against me," and they all fire at him.
Yeah,
And then they
yeah.
go shoot him point blank in the head. Like, well, that theory didn't work out. But,
I I always get this movie and 3 Days of the Condor confused because they both have day and an animal in the title, and I haven't seen either. So I know the Day of the Jackal. That's what the Jackal was based on, which is a movie I've seen. I don't know. Have you all seen that movie?
it's the one with
It's Bruce Willis as the assassin. And
yeah,
I think probably the most famous scene is where he shoots off Jack Black's arm because he makes that like remote 50 cal machine gun or whatever.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. That movie was not as good as this one.
No. But I mean, there's some memorable stuff in it, but it's not as good as this.
in both movies, the assassin defends a gay guy
Yeah.
and kills him. Well, because I'm assuming that's what the Turkish bath thing was. It's like, oh, you should stay with me. Wink, wink.
Yeah. Because he didn't want to have to like sign into a hotel registry. So
Yeah. I was surprised how much hotel registries were based on passports back then, because I just figured you could be like, I'm Tom, what the fuck, I'm just from this state or whatever. Because, I mean, it was before phones and cameras and all that shit. I thought it'd be easier to, like, fucking fool people, but it seemed like it was actually more secure, which is weird.
yeah, I don't know about going back across like country lines in Europe. Like I think because, before Brexit, I think that stuff used to be easy to just like go between countries. Because the way people talk about it, like you don't have to like stop at a border or anything. Like you can just take a train from like Germany to France or whatever. I mean that's the way to talk about it. I don't know if it's here. It made it seem like hey, you're at the French border, like unload your car.
See, it didn't seem too difficult to obtain fake ID. What I like about the Jackal in this movie is he's kind of like your auto mechanic assassin. Like he's got a lot of DIY projects built into his assassination. He's gonna bypass the exhaust in his car and hide the rifle in there, and then he's gonna repaint the car. Kind of out in the countryside, and he knows people are after him, and he's gonna keep the mission going, which was interesting because this was based on the real assassination attempt on de Gaulle, which happened in the 60s because he.
Is this what they depict in the beginning? Is that what?
Yeah, that was the
okay.
real one. They shot up his car and a couple other cars and. There was people in the French military who thought that he betrayed them by granting Algeria like an independence, a kind of independence. So this was like a fictionalized version of a follow-up attack that these people would do. So it's based on real things. De Gaulle is a real person. He was Nixon's favorite foreign leader to meet. He's like, De Gaulle has France together. Like, yeah, they love him so much they've tried to kill him like 4 times, but okay. It's Nixon logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think France's government has changed like more times than any other country in the last like 3 decades or whatever.
Yeah, they've had a lot of changes over there. It's funny that they were all driving those their little cars. Like those are the official government cars of France, were those the ones where the suspension pumps up and stuff, the old Citroens.
Oh,
That like they were high tech for the time. They still are high tech even by today's standards, except for the engine and stuff. But like the whole thing with the suspension, like that's crazy. That's like really high tech. So I was glad to see that.
Well, it was also like I was looking up facts for this before we got on the podcast. It was talking about they actually had unprecedented access to government buildings and also the middle of a military parade during a real parade for Liberation Day. And that's why you see all these tanks and everything else. And I was like, oh, look at that chat. Like, oh, look at that. I haven't fucking seen one of those tanks ever in real life. That's interesting. So that was cool. I mean, there's a couple of cool things I really respected about this movie, like the whole. I've never seen somebody hook their leg into their belt or whatever and like act like an amputee to like get access to an area. I thought that was kind of cool because I didn't even think about that. And then just like
Or the crutches hold the gun.
yeah, the crutches hold the gun, and the gun itself is really cool. Like it's just a simple. I can hide it almost anywhere, and no one's gonna think it's a gun because it doesn't look anything like it. And like the exploding 22 rounds seem too fierce, to be honest. But at the same time, maybe that's how good it is. I have no idea. But at the same time, there's stupid stuff about it, like how easy people went down or died to like a simple punch to the gut or something. That seems stupid. But that's just regular.
Well, I had to look it up later. I was like, how did that one lady died? And it's like apparently he choked her, but it's like she had like the lungs the size of a nickel. It's like just...
didn't struggle at all. Just, yeah.
I was assuming that was weird because there was just an arm and a tit, and then the arm kind of dropped down. It's like, oh, stab her? Like did he like have?
Yeah, that's what.
Like needle knives or something where you go in the back of the brain. It's like, I guess he choked her, but it's like, oh, she must have all that smoking must have to breathe every half second or she'll suffocate. Because everyone in this movie smokes constantly everywhere.
Well, I forget what he put in the Old Spice bottles. Did he put like poison in there or something?
Hair dye.
Hair dye.
Oh, hair dye. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because he had to get paraffin wax to seal off make the bottles have separate chambers.
Because like, because I forget, does he like poison the old lady or whatever? I forget what he does the old ladies. So
neck chop, the old neck chop.
Oh, okay, I missed that bit.
A lot of neck chopping in this movie,
which was an old trope. Because really, if you do that, you're just going to piss somebody off. I mean, maybe if you're like some Korean super karate guy that's been punching trees down for 20 years, that'll work. But normal people, like, they can't just be like, "Hi," and you're going to fall over dead. No, you're going to get up and want to hurt someone. But you know, I mean, it's a movie of its time. It's
I do like how the Jackal is just kind of like matter of fact. Like there's like, oh yeah, I think we can get this done, and like I feel like no one would believe him. And then just as the movie goes on, he just becomes progressively more of a psychopath. It's like, oh okay, yeah, this guy kills people for a living.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like a menacing guy. He seems like an affable guy. It's like, is this guy a badass or something? And
yeah, because he can seduce women, and if he wasn't like kind of like emotionally intelligent, that wouldn't happen.
I couldn't sleep with a woman just by asking her about a magazine.
I'm fascinated by combines and hog farming. Oh. Well, let me plow your field.
Because I didn't think they were. I thought when they cut to them in bed, I was like, "That's gotta be the minister that's been spied on and the woman that's spying on him." I was like, "Nope, that's them." Like, how the fucking hell did he sleep with her after that? That didn't seem like a "Hey, let's come back and fuck each other" kind of introduction.
Well, he was a good-looking guy with lots of torso muscles, so that apparently just they can't resist that.
Yeah, because in the Jackal version, like Bruce Willis is just pretty much a weird sociopath throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, he's not a likable guy.
No.
No, and this guy definitely becomes a sociopath throughout most of the movie, not the beginning part. Because he just seemed very like casual about a lot of things.
Yeah, like, cheerio! I can kill the French. I can kill the French president or minister, wherever they are.
$500,000. It's like, wow, that's cheap.
Well,
yeah, like how that
overall.
Yeah, $500,000 up front. Yeah, I do like that they have to rob banks to pay him. They just cut to a bunch of like madcap robberies.
I also like how the French Action Service, which is what they're called, when they kidnap the guy that's running their mail, the Walensky guy, yeah, they just torture him to death. Like, I mean, they literally electrocute the guy, and you know, they show pictures of his face. He looks like he's had an eye out. He's been thoroughly beaten. And it's like, yeah, because the guy Michael Lonsdale, who most people here would know as Hugo Drax from Moonraker, is the Deputy Commissioner Claude Lebel, the French investigator. And he's very casual about things. He's like, well, yeah, he died under interrogation, but we have some information. Oh, good show, you know, because it's all British people and Michael Lonsdale playing French people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I was always confused, because I didn't understand like when we're dealing with like the French and when we're dealing with the British, because they basically have the same accent.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah. He toned down the British accent. Well, Michael Lonsdale, he's like a French. Well, he died in 2020, but he's like a French or English actor.
Yeah.
His dad was like an English airman or something, and his mom was French. So he's perfectly bilingual in either language. Because he kind of looks like a British guy, but he's actually was born in France, and he knows that culture very well. So that's why he plays a snotty European so well. Because he was also the guy. He was in like the movie about the Munich bombings, where he played the intelligence guy based in France. And also was driven around in a Citroen DS, even in that movie. It was the same time period, though. So. But yeah, it was nice to see him in like as just like a main character. It's like, oh yeah, Michael Lance, I know him. Mainly as Hugo Drax, which was like a ridiculous character, but he did a good job. One of the best Bond villains. Had the weirdest lines in the movie. But yeah, anyway, back to the Jackal.
Well, I thought it was funny about like them like reviewing the interrogation tapes. It's like, hey, he's screaming too much. I can't get good information out of it because he's screaming too loud.
What did he say before he pulled his teeth out? Back.
Turn it up. I mean, that's the only time you get like those people reviewing. That's the only time where you get like kind of like sympathy for the guy being tortured and like them actually having to like, oh God, what did we do? Like having to like to deal with the situation. But then it's like, oh, well, whatever.
They're internal terrorists in France. You know, we do the same shit. We just don't talk about it. The French are actually notorious for stuff like that too. Interrogation's like kind of like food. It's an art form and a dance. We've got to do it all this way. You're going to end up dead, but you know, we're not going to be just brutes like the Germans or the Russians or the Americans. It's like we're going to try different things. We're going to beat you. We're going to electrocute you. We're going to give you weird drugs based on like clams or something that like boost your pain response 100%. And it's like it's French. Well, I mean, you don't threaten their internal security. They're actually pretty good at dealing with terrorists. They have a better record than we do.
They torture like they cook. You just put more butter on it till it tastes good.
There's kind of an art form there. And the electricity is like the wine that complements the meal. But yeah.
So yeah, you have LaBelle trying to clandestinely find the Jackal because they think if he gets wind of them looking for them that he'll just like be gone in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
He should have been, but
he really wanted them.
He has scruples. It's like these people paid me.
Well, that's true. I mean, he didn't think he'd fail because I mean, look on his face when he flew halfway across the room into the wall when he got shot by a machine gun. He didn't expect it.
That is so funny.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why the
almost
fuck
knocked
they did
the
that.
set down too. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It's like they had him on a wire. It's like no one reacts like that to gunfire. It just goes right through you.
Well, there's what's funny about that scene is he has his gun set up, he shoots it, and like he misses because the guy like does some like ducking thing for a ceremony.
Well, the guy he's pinning the metal on is really short, and the gall was like 6 foot something, so he had to bend over. And just at that second, though, after we heard the report of the rifle, he's watching through the scope, and then the gall bends. It's like, wait a minute, he's not that far away where there to be this delay, but you know, it's.
But like because he has a silencer on it, like you basically don't even hear the bullet, and when it hitting the ground, also barely makes a sound. Yeah. And then the guy shoots the door, which is very loud, and then he gets another bullet in the gun to shoot the guard, and then LaBelle picks up the gun and shoots it, and it's like 400,000 bullets go into him and fling him across the room like he got hit by a car.
I'm surprised they didn't just fill a cow with explosives for the effect of getting shot with a 9mm, submachine gun just blows them to bits. But it was silly, but it was the high point of the movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, they caught the guy. Well, also it's just funny because then they immediately go to like they're looking at some guy's office because he stole this guy's idea, and they're like, "Wait, who really was the Jackal?" And they just cut to LaBelle looking over an unmarked grave, and they just bury him. It's like, all right, done with that, and the movie's over.
And he was being buried like someone would have been buried during the Black Death.
Yeah, they're just
a coffin, 2 guys with ropes, and they're burying about 2 feet in the ground, which is going to smell wonderful in a couple months. And they're just throwing dirt over him, and then roll credits. We'll never know who the Jackal was. It's like, Give me a fucking hint.
Well, because I like how they had to exotify the guy that had that apartment or whatever. I can't remember his fucking name now. Where it's like he just shows up like, this
Paul
is my
Duggan.
apartment. And there's, yeah. Not Paul Duggan, that was his other identity.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The one where they are like, oh, in French, the jackal
The
is
guy-
Cal, and then
Charles Calthrop.
Yeah, Charles Calthrop.
Yeah.
So it's like yes, I get you put it in there to be mysterious about who the jackal really was, but it just seemed like you're trying to exotify the guy that had the apartment. Like, oh, he's not guilty. Do we can move on from that or whatever? He got his.
The ending of this movie just felt like they ran out of money, but also the movie's going long, so I don't know if they're just like, you know what, the jackal's dead, nobody cares. Let's just end the movie.
Well, because I've read the book too, I'll tell you, this movie was fairly faithful to the book. I mean, there's some areas that they strayed, and there's a lot of stuff that the jackal did that just wasn't included in the movie for time, because he's just like this jack of all trades handyman who applies like handyman skills to international assassination, and also things about his past and stuff like that. Like, you still don't know who he is at the end, but he has a much more menacing, like, yeah, if anyone could kick the Gaul, it's this guy. It's like this guy, because he was killing people in South America. He was killing people because it's always hinted at he's either British or an American. Those are the only people that have that level of experience with that. And it turns out it's no way it could be an American just because they don't have anyone like that. So it does go to the British thing. It's like, well, we think he lives here, and maybe he picked up some skills here, but it was always like, but he was like in a more of a colonial setting than actually living in the UK. And so there was some stuff that didn't make it to the movie, but it was pretty faithful to the book, as it should be, because that book was like hugely successful. So
Yeah, I just like the details, how they deal with everything in the movie. Just,
Yeah.
It's just not like, here's the next misdirector clue. It's just like, oh, I got to build a gun, so I got to go to like a machinist, and like it's like, oh, I can't make it out of aluminum, so I had to make it out of stainless steel. All those little details. It's like I like that stuff.
yeah, because I remember in the book, like in France, they were like, we have this body, and it's not this Calthrop guy, and just they're like, say it's an unnamed, bury him in an unmarked grave as an unnamed foreigner, because we don't know. So that was kind of that was it, and it was LaBelle at his funeral. So they got it pretty close. Sad thing about this movie was Frederick Forsyth was he was a struggling writer, and he this book got published, and it was fairly well received, but then they wanted to buy the rights to the movie, and he's like, okay, we'll give you £18,000 and 10% of the back end, or we'll give you £20,000 and no back end. And he was just like, oh, I haven't had money in years, I'll take £20,000. And this movie made like $30 million or something. Like, oh my god, I hate myself for this. But he said at the end, he was like, I like the movie.
Which is rare for the author of the original to appreciate the movie.
Yeah, well, they kind of they did a good job of staying close to the source material. They didn't quite. The book was cool because they like broke down, like, LaBelle works. He's French National Police or whatever, and they kind of have like, this is how we do a manhunt, in the 1960s and 70s. And so they did break that down a lot more, and it was kind of cool. And then it was like, oh, this is how an assassin would work. Like, so they say they had like a lot more details in the book, but it was,
I like the bit where like they catch the mole, or the unintentional mole of the committee, and they're like, how'd you catch him, LaBelle? And he's like, oh, I just tapped all your phones. And then he's like immediately dismissed from the committee. He's like, okay. And then he's back on it just really quickly though, but
yeah,
because they don't like that they're being spied on.
Yep. Yeah, all in all, for an older movie, kind of a fun glimpse in the past. And a political movie that didn't involve the Cold War, which kind of made it unique. It was more like a direct, just, we got this evil assassin out here, and and it was also funny to see like how they searched for things and how they did things back then. It's like, well, check all the passports that came into the country, and nowadays it'd be like click, 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 click. Oh no, we got to get like roomfuls of people going through cards and people calling other people. Can you help me with this?
And this is like takes place in July of '63, so this is before. Well, in the story, it'd be before the Kennedy assassination, right? Because that's 11/12/63. I believe that's the date.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to. When did this come out?
Well, this came out in like '73, but like.
Yeah, I'm looking at the book now.
But like in the story, it's in '63.
Yeah.
And it's in July, so it'd be before the Kennedy.
Book basically came out a year and a half before the movie, so yeah. But it was set before the Kennedy assassination, which is why like de Gaulle's just like, hang around a bunch of open windows, and have this which actually de Gaulle did. He said he didn't care. He's like, go ahead, let him shoot me, fuck him. The thing about him not changing his prearranged schedule for a year, like de Gaulle really did that. He's like, I'm not afraid of these people. It's like, well, we get it, but these people you're talking about are ex-French military people that might have a little more skill than a bunch of the random terrorists that were running around at that time. Well, it's the same terrorists, just different stuff. Yeah, good movie.
I'm glad everybody liked it, and I'm glad I liked it, because not that I have a problem with anything you guys pick or anything like that. It's just that I just don't. Yeah, sometimes I just don't care for movies. So, not that everybody loves every movie that's on any of the lists we come up with, but it's I guess it's not a contest. I'm not trying to be angry at anybody's choices.
Oh no, we didn't think.
No, Marissa, I was just running down the noir list they had because there was a bunch of movies I'd never seen before, but had like cast that I recognized. That's always going to be the interesting thing. Was like, oh, I know everybody in this cast, but I've never seen this movie.
Well, because I was debating watching the Martin Scorsese movie I'd never seen, but I didn't really like the plot. It didn't look very entertaining, so I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I didn't like it. But at the same time, Martin Scorsese doesn't make movies I like all the way through. He's made a couple bombs that didn't do well, like Hugo and what was the other one? Oh yeah, the last Robert De Niro Al Pacino movie that I fucking hated. I can't think of it. The Irishman, I think, is what it was called, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, can we talk about the book now?
Yeah, we read a book. Is it Project Hail Mary or just Hail Mary?
It says Project Hail Mary.
Okay. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, the author of The Martian, Artemis, and I think that's it.
Yes, this book was published this year. It's his third novel. This one actually was the first one to involve non-human characters. It's set at an indeterminate point in the future. I'm guessing like 15 years from now or something.
Well, it seems the technology they have isn't really widely advanced from our own, except maybe like in computers and stuff, maybe. But
well, they also have fusion bombs.
Yeah,
so we don't have those yet, but we're probably pretty close to them. So I noticed there were some things that seemed to it doesn't really dwell on the world very much. So it's like, oh, well, they have at least some level of technology to accomplish something.
Although what was really weird for me is that the guy who reads the book is the same guy who reads the We Are Bob series.
Okay.
Which I don't know if you know what that is.
I do. You've told me that.
And so, the openings of both books are essentially the same. It's somebody waking up, not knowing who they are, and kind of groggily coming to talk and all that stuff. It was like, wait, did I select the right book? I was like, okay, yes, it's still the right book.
Yeah, so our book opens with a guy named Ryland Grace, which is an unusual name. He's a science teacher in the middle school in the U.S.
Well, we don't know that yet. he wakes up basically wakes up out of a coma, doesn't know where he is or why he's there, but slowly comes to realize it.
Yeah, this book uses a form of narration where it's it's retelling the story, but from a guy who's actually remembering his story a piece at a time.
Yeah.
So it goes from the present to the past, from the present to the past, and, it
And every time you go in
farther
the
as it goes.
yeah, because usually the stuff in the past like informs kind of like what he's feeling in the next chapter in the present, but also gives information on like who he is and why he's there and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
so essentially the plot of the movie is like there's some organism that is killing the sun.
Astrophage,
Yeah.
which means star eater in Latin or Greek or something.
Yeah. And so they have to figure out like, all right, well, how can we like stop or control this? And like the astrophage can like contain a massive amount of energy for like how small it is. And I love this detail that they use the astrophage to power their space engines.
Yeah. Because it's some small organism that's very robust in certain circumstances, because it absorbs light energy and reproduces with carbon dioxide, but it reproduces at some massive rate, and to the point that it's actually like the planet's going to start getting cooler because this thing is absorbing, this astrophage is eating so much light energy that like Earth's just going to freeze if we let it continue.
But
So
they
then
just
they bring some to Earth and they use it as it's like, oh yeah, this holds a tremendous, this holds more energy than anything we've ever conceived, like thousands of times more energy than like plutonium or something. And it's fairly easy to like separate it and use the energy, but it creates fantastical amounts of power that human beings have never handled before.
yeah. So they're able to make like rocket engines out of it, generators out of it. They use it, and because of its property and how it absorbs light ray, it also absorbs radiation. So they use it as a shielding agent around the ship. It's just like it's like the enemy, and it's the magic tool for everything, which I really like in this. But that's what Andy Weir is really good at. Is like. Basically, he's like the MacGyver of novels. He's like, all right, what do I got in this situation? And he clams it all together. It's like, this will work.
And you'd think like human beings, it's like, oh, we've got some weird microbe that's eating stars. Well, we're fucked. That's way beyond our science to deal with, and it is. Which is so yeah, they create engines that can send people to. They find out that Tau Ceti is not dimming like all the other stars that we can see.
Yeah.
And they're like, why is that? How does it resist astrophage? And so they conceive of building a ship that will travel there at near sea, or the speed of light, but it's still going to take, 12 years.
4 years relatively, 4 years travel for the people inside the ship, but 13 years on Earth.
Yeah.
Because they're able to use the astrophage, the engines can, because the energy is so dense, they can constantly accelerate at 1.5 Gs, which will basically get them, like they're not, because they're constantly accelerating, it's like adding to their speed. So they're going like, not as, well, I mean, as close as they can to the speed of light, but they're not going warp speed, but it is conventionally getting there as fast as possible because of the amount of engine fuel they have.
Yeah.
And it's also called Project Hail Mary because it's a suicide mission. They can get them there, but they can't come back.
And they stopped counting the cost of building this ship at like $40 trillion. Or something. Like,
yeah, there's like the Dutch lady or Danish lady or whatever who's able to like get all the world's governments together because she's just kind of like
Eva Strat.
Yeah, she's so focused on everything, and she just like so straightforward that she just gets people to do thing, and it just like subverts all governments in the world because like, well, we're all gonna die if we don't do this, and it's like, and she just keeps all of like the moral quandaries in the back of her mind. It's like she knows they're there, but she doesn't care. It's like she has to save humanity.
Well, I like it that like everyone in the world has a part to play, because this is not like an Amero-centric novel.
Yeah,
like there's only 2 Americans that have main roles in this. And so they have all this. It's like, who's the expert in this? Who's the expert in that? And so of course, for building the spaceship, that's all Russians and Americans because we have the most experience with that. But then for like providing funding and manpower and stuff, it's the Chinese, and also producing like how many of these super cell, because they basically like create this massive breeding ground for astrophage that takes over Africa.
Well, it's like West Africa, which is basically
Yeah.
almost uninhabitable, and it's just pure sand.
Yeah.
And they just like pretty much just lay the continent down with just these astrophage breeding grounds.
Yeah, and it actually fucks the weather up, and because now they're absorbing light energy on Earth too.
Yeah.
But and then to delay the cooling of the atmosphere, they use essentially like some neutron fusion bombs to release all this methane from the polar region, because they figure out like, oh, we need global warming now, so they just release all this methane energy. But the problem is methane dissipates fairly rapidly, so that they have it's a very grim prognosis for what Earth's going to be like in the intervening years of the Hail Mary mission.
Yeah.
Because they say, well, yeah, once everyone starts running out of food, do you think America, who will also be running out of food, is going to share that food? Can anyone defeat America? No, it's going to, nations are going to align and form alliances against other countries, and the world will be hell. And there's a reason for that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll just talk about Ryland's continuing mission.
But yeah, they're at what's the new planet?
Tau Ceti. Well, they're at the sun, Tau Ceti.
Yeah. So they're at Tau Ceti, and then while he's analyzing things, he finds another blip on the radar, and he discovers it's an alien spaceship.
And this is where I thought the novel was going to go stupid. It's like, oh, the super smart aliens are going to have all the answers, and we just need to figure out how to get our main character home. Like, I was writing this out in my mind,
Yeah.
and I was like, but I know this guy's a better writer than this. So
Yeah, and the aliens are actually like
alien.
Yeah, well, yeah. But they're also like they don't. It's like the circumstances of their planet allow them to build a spaceship, but they like have no computers and stuff like that to actually like, and don't have like theoretical physics to guide their spaceships.
Yeah, they're basically they're so he meets this alien, and I love the way it's done in the book, because the alien like builds a tunnel, and you got to understand the alien breathes superheated ammonia and lives at 30 atmospheres, so they're never going to meet each other.
Yeah,
like, because one will explode and one will be crushed, so it's like, okay, we're not going to be able to meet each other. Actually, they do find a way around that, but he calls the alien builds a like portal between the two ships, and so he puts all different materials in this section that seals them apart, and it's basically because they have no form of communication.
Yeah.
And so the alien is like waiting for him to do something, and he looks through this really tiny section about the size of a quarter, I'm guessing, and he says, oh, I can see through this, because these aliens also don't have eyes. They don't understand sight. They do everything like bats do, where they send out sound and it reflects to them, and then that's how they can tell the world. It's like super sonar. So once he taps the thing, and then he can look through that, and then he's looking in there like, what does the alien look like? And the guy reading it was perfect. It's like, oh, it's a spider. It's
a
like
dog-sized spider.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, this is weird. It was almost like a letdown. I was like, oh, I was hoping for like one of the aliens from like Close Encounters or something. Nah, it's a weird rock spider. So they have this thing, I'm going to skip ahead here because read the book. That's why we're talking about it. But they have this thing here where they learn to communicate, because the alien produces sounds, and this guy apparently knows enough about computers where he can make a translator that records the sounds, and then he assigns a name to it. And so then the sounds become words, and they develop a form of communication. It's very limited at first, but then it develops as the story goes along. Because they don't really
at the end they basically become like Han Solo and Chewie from Star Wars, where they aren't translating to each other. They just know what each other are saying. They're just talking out loud in their own language.
Well, we could never really make Iridian noises effectively, and I don't think they have mouths, so it's like they couldn't form sounds like we do. So it's like, oh yeah, we're never going to talk, but we can talk. So I can make a laptop and make it into a sound wave translator, but it's very workmanlike how it does. It doesn't like this guy has some weird skill. It's like, oh no, this sound means this, so this will make this. It will say this word when it hears this sound. I don't know how well that'd work in real life, but we got to move the story along. So.
Yeah, it's more about the process of how you do the translation. Then you just move on. It's like, all right, we can talk to each other. We're not going to worry about everything that gets in the way of communication.
So you think these rock spiders, it's like, oh, they're going to have the answers we don't. And it turns out, no, the rock spiders, because they live in a planet that's got such a dense atmosphere and under such high pressure, they don't know what radiation is. They're operating, they put a ship into space and sent it to their sun or to Tau Ceti based on, because their sun was being killed by the astrophage too, based on entirely Newtonian physics. They do not have they don't understand orbital mechanics beyond like gravity and weight and stuff. There's no such thing as like they don't understand physics. They don't understand quantum physics. They don't have any concept of that because they never had to deal with it. Radiation kills most of the aliens on the ship because they never understood what radiation was
because they're at
yeah. And so when everyone on the ship is dying, the only reason Rocky's left is because he's like the ship's engineer. So he was by the astrophage, which absorbs all the radiation. But they had no idea. They thought they was dying of a sickness or something. And then that's when Grace comes to the realization. It's like, oh, these aren't the super smart aliens. Actually, their technology it's more their physiology that makes them superior than their technology.
Well, they're like metallurgy is superior because they can, what can they make? I forget what's the super metal that they can make.
Oh, xenonite? Yeah, it's xenon gas and a hardener. And it makes a super strong metal, like an impossibly strong metal that's got like a weight like aluminum, but it has a problem. We find out. But yeah.
But yeah, because their spaceship is huge.
Yeah.
They also but they also have like, you know, better also have longer lifespans too. But like
they live about 700 years.
Because you find out Rocky's been there for like 46 years. It's like,
what's weird about the aliens, and this is what Andy Weir does well with the emotional stuff that he writes into stories, is because that alien is just as alone and afraid as our main character, but he has a much longer lifespan to contemplate that.
Yeah.
Because remember when they finally put the, you know, he makes a material out of all this clear xenonite so they can sort of see each other. And that's when the thing about, you've got to watch me sleep. It's like, why? Why would I want to watch you sleep? I'm not learning anything from that. It's like, no, so predators don't get me. There's no predators here in space. And he's like, it's cultural. I can't explain it. So they both watch each other sleep in this tunnel when they're not working. And human sleep cycles are very different because it's like we find out, it's like, oh, we can be awoken in a sleep. They can't. That's why they watch each other while they sleep, because when they go to sleep, it's like their body shuts down.
They go into a coma.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is why they watch each other sleep, because you're gonna be completely vulnerable, unlike humans, which can kind of wake up suddenly and do things.
But even though the aliens are seemingly primitive, the other thing they have advanced is like their brain can do like basically math on the fly. Like they can basically do calculus on the fly, which is why they're good at other things, but they just don't have like computer technology and stuff like that.
Well, because they don't have eyes, they don't have a whole section of their brain devoted to that.
Yeah.
They have like echo, because they were trying to figure out, remember when they were talking, it's like, why do you seem smarter than me, but you're not? And they were both going back and forth. It's like, you're supernumerate, you have a perfect memory, I don't have that. And he was kind of like, see, I put the Iridians here, I kind of go back to an early novel. It's like, remember the book, The Mote and God's Eye, where you had the Moties? And they were like born into a caste. Like you had the engineers, the warriors, the leaders, and the engineer Modis. We thought, oh, these must be geniuses. Look, it's putting a fucking fusion engine together in no time, and it's more efficient and better. But it was all kind of crudely made, but it worked better. And then we come to figure out, oh, they're just idiot savants. Like they can't get outside of a certain range of thinking. They don't think over the horizon. They're just solving this problem. And I think the Iridians, at least Rocky, seems to be kind of somewhere in that spectrum. So I always thought of him as like a Modi who's like, I'm really good at this technical stuff, and I have I can remember everything. I have had 100 years of life experience with this stuff. But when it comes to thinking over the horizon, like the imagination, they don't seem to have that.
Well, also he said like he's just an engineer. Like all the scientists died, so he thinks of himself as like one of the dumber Iridians.
Yeah. well, we don't learn much about Iridian culture outside of Rocky. So, but he is or he isn't, or maybe they're like born to certain. We don't know how their socialization works. Really.
But also, the people they threw in the spaceship probably had to be the best of the best. So he was like the best engineer, but he wasn't the best scientist.
Well, that's the thing with like Ryland Grace is like he's not an astronaut, he's not an engineer, he's really good at cellular biology, which actually you find out he has a PhD in it. But the reason he's teaching middle school is because people didn't like his theories, and he was like, "Well, fuck you, I don't want to deal with you anymore, so I'm going away."
Yeah, which was about like, was it like that? Life can exist without water, and then when they discover the astrophage, they're like, haha, here it is, and then he finds out the thing is entirely water.
Yeah. That's like 90% of the stuff in it that we have in us. Like, oh. But then he finds the things that exist without water.
Oh, I thought they didn't follow through with that. Or were the Iridians not carbon based or whatever? Or
well, there
or
was
not
a lot
water?
of that long conversation when they were fixing the ship after they found the astrophage predator and it ate all the fuel, where they were talking about their intelligence and their because Rocky said, no, we're evolved from something similar. It's like we're very different physically because of the environments we come in, but we're not smarter than one another. We just have different abilities based on how we were raised and what our biology is, because they were trying to figure out, like, can we eat each other's food? And it's like, no, that's too alien. It's because the Iridians breathe ammonia, and then Rocky later, for good reason, comes to fear oxygen. It's like, oh, that's the worst thing ever. I never want to be around oxygen. It's dangerous. It's stupid. It can explode. He goes, ammonia doesn't explode, not under the pressure they're operating. But because you got to remember that ammonia, I was doing some quick math on my phone. It's like, oh, he's breathing in like ammonia. It's like 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like, oh, wow, this is a really alien creature. And it's mostly rocks, too. You find out like they have this, he calls him Rocky because he looks like stone. And a lot of their reason they're probably long lived is they live in such an extreme environment. Like they don't have like diseases like we do and stuff.
And heavy atmosphere or heavy gravity, because also like he's the size of a dog, and he did the math, and he's like, oh, he'd be like 300 pounds.
Yeah, he weighs 300 pounds. Yeah, it's this hugely dense thing. And also, like Rocky says, like, well, you evolved with some resistance to radiation. I have no resistance to radiation. They're like, why is that? It's like, well, because our planet lets radiation in. We don't live in this thin atmosphere compared to you. And so they kind of like came to this conclusion at the beginning. It's like us and astrophage were all seeded by something else, which is like, oh, they're bringing God into this now, or where's this going? But it's also two guys isolated on a spaceship who both think they're going to die. So it's like,
I was at I'll let you know, like when he woke up, there was two other people that were supposed to be on the spaceship, but they died during the coma process.
Yeah.
Presumably because I remember there was something on his desk about like a valve that needs to be changed, and I'm assuming that was the problem. Like the valve got dirty and accidentally killed the other people.
I never really, because the guy who was supposed to be on the mission instead of Grace, he died trying to proof that out, I thought.
Okay, yeah.
It's like that valve can fail at this point or not, and they gave him the wrong amount, and he just created like a nuclear bomb in the Vulcan arc, or at least released the equivalent amount of energy, which was grams, by the way. That's how powerful astrophage is. Because Dubois and his creepy girlfriend Shapiro both die in the test. I don't know how Andy Weir intended Dubois and Shapiro to come across when he wrote them. Maybe he knows people like that. But to me, it's like, well, this guy's a creep. I mean, me and Annie are having sex now. How do you feel about that? Does that endanger the mission? He's like, I don't care. I don't want to know. Oh, we are scheduled to have sex in 15 minutes. So. It's like, is this guy a fucking serial killer? What's going to happen with this guy as it turns out? So that could be, there's a lot of things like that are thrown into the book, because I imagined I wrote a very dark ending to this book. Well, in my mind. We'll talk about it.
Well, Andrew, we'll jump in here because you also read the book. I don't know if you want to continue any of the thoughts we're having. Or...
Well, I mean, if you guys want to finish, and I can talk about it at that point, it's fine.
Right.
Oh, no, go ahead. Jump in.
No, I enjoyed the book. I thought it was kind of... I mean, I guess I haven't read his other two books. Obviously, I know how The Martian ends in the movie. That it ends with the happy ending, and he's back and space survival and stuff. Sorry, but at the same time, I kind of expected at any point that they're all gonna fucking die, because without either one of them, they would have fucking failed. Without Rocky, they would have failed. Without fucking him, they would have failed. Because like Rocky couldn't fucking look in a microscope and fucking do all this other shit. He thinks it's amazing they can see all this other shit. Like he's fascinated by a laptop, which seems like that's not that fucking cool. But at the same time, compared to like, oh, I can just build fucking structures out of gas.
Well, if you think about it, though, like Rocky's cognitive ability, because it's different from ours, they never made thinking machines because they didn't need a computer crutch. Everything you tell them, they remember apparently perfectly for some reason.
Yeah.
So that like they don't not have computers because they just never imagined the need for such a thing. Or maybe you couldn't do silicone in their atmosphere or something. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff that.
No, I know. I mean, they're obviously at different points of their evolutionary ladder and technological ladder. Because I mean, talks about the flat angles and the helper arms on the outside, because they've only recently started going to space because they never needed to worry about it because they couldn't see anything anyway. And so now it's like, oh, they don't know about radiation because their atmosphere protects them from it. Otherwise, they'd know about radiation. They wouldn't all die on the ground here. They didn't know about relativity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have packed so much fuel. They can give me some and still have plenty to get home and shit. And it's like, yeah, and their food's totally different. Their atmosphere is totally different. And they're totally different as a person. Fine. But at the same time, it's like him, surviving his coma throughout almost 4 years and nobody else doing it. And, just like the revelation at some point, they're like, oh, my amnesia wasn't because of the coma. Maybe it could have been, but it's because I was given this drug to give me amnesia and knock me out because I didn't want to go on the mission because I'm a pussy.
French interrogation drugs, French interrogation stuff. Yeah, that was part of this too. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just end the disaster with, hey, we gave him this many grams of microphage instead of a milligram of microphage. That's why when he opened the valve to test the failure, just like fucking a giant nuclear blast happened and wiped out a compound and like, shook everything and killed everybody.
That's probably
like.
Well, that's probably the only problem I have like with Andy Weir books is like sometimes he has too many problems to solve in the book. Because like that one's like, do you really need that to take out those two characters? Because there's like 2 chapters on like why this thing blew up, and it's just like a clerical error essentially.
Yeah.
It's just they couldn't tell the difference because you can't tell the difference. It's too little.
Or the bit where like Rocky has to save what's his name? What's the main character's name?
Ryland Grace.
Right. Well, they have to save
Grace most of the book.
Yeah, when they have to save Ryland. And then he throws Rocky back in his environment, and then he has to like spend a whole chapter creating this like air gun to like blow stuff off his back, and then it turns out to be that was wrong the whole time. It's like, okay, so we didn't need those whole like 3 chapters, but like, but that's fine. I like Andy Weir solving problems. It's okay because there's even more of that in The Martian, where it's just like there's more problems to solve. It's like, yeah, this is you're on a completely you're not on Earth. There's always problems, and there's not enough materials.
The thing with like creating the high pressure air to blow off Rocky's ventilator caps is because he assumed those ventilators were for Rocky to breathe.
Yeah.
Like, we got to clear this shit off because he doesn't know what those are, which I like that happened with that character, like a lot of things, because it shows, oh, this guy isn't like James Bond where he's capable of anything you throw at him. He's going to make a lot of mistakes, which is something that I liked about him. I kind of get it.
He's conducting science.
Yeah, he's like, what do we do? How do I heal a rock creature? I don't. We don't have rock creatures on Earth. But I did like some of the stuff with him and Rocky, like, when they would put their hands on the mirror, because they were both alone. So it's like, it seems like the Iridians have the same range of emotions we do, which is interesting, because they didn't have trouble relating to. It's like, oh, you came out here. It's like, how are you going to get back with so little astrophage? Well, I'm not. I'm going to die. This was this was never intended to be a 2-way trip. And he's like, oh, you must be a good person. That's a great sacrifice. We didn't design our ship that way. We were planning on coming back. But of course, we also have these extended lifespans, and so maybe culturally it was different. Which that was interesting that it came up in the book. It's like, we're both good people. We're both good people, and then Grace remembers more and more as time goes on. It's like, well, actually I'm not, because I didn't want to go on this trip. and I never intended to. And no matter what you say, you're not going to make me do it. So they're just, they're going to force him to go. But you don't find that out until almost like the last 2 chapters.
Yeah.
Which is when
Well, I mean, to be honest, what do you think was going to happen? Like, he has 2 days basically to train his replacement, and it's like, yeah, I can do that in 2 days, no problem. We totally make sure that it's not a fucking problem. It's like, yeah, no, you're going to get sent on this mission because, I mean, as much as you kind of hate the woman for wielding her power throughout the whole book and being a dick to everybody and just getting her way and not having to deal with, red tape, which is like great also, by the way, because it's like, yeah, because that covers the whole thing of like, would everybody in the world cooperate to save themselves? Nope, of course not. We would all die in political red tape and controversy and argument before we actually got anything off the ground. So it was nice to see that kind of take hold and get past all that bullshit. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, she totally knows that she's probably fucking a horrible human being and, awful to people, and she definitely deserves what's coming to her. But as long as humanity survives, she did her job, and I love her character for that, because it's actually fucking good. But at the same time, it's like, the only thing I didn't like about the book is that fucking, like, everything turned out fine. Like, there's never a fucking, like, disaster book where, like, nope, everybody dies. Nobody, like, this all was in vain. Nothing happened, and whatever that, like, basically they couldn't tackle.
I mean, I'd say most Annie Weir's books, like, it ends in positively because, like, it's like you put people through this much turmoil, you got to give them a win, and the win is like saving humanity.
Well, the thing about
which is ambiguous at the end.
Yeah, they aren't giving answers, but the thing with Eva Stratt is she is the embodiment of what you call the 1% doctrine, which was something that was developed under the Bush administration about if there's a 1% chance that people can get nuclear materials, a bomb, whatever in this country, we have to act as if it's 100% probable. So every decision she was making was based on, like, just odds, long odds. It's like, if we can't do this, if we can't do that, what will the delay be? What will that cost us? So everything with her was always the 1% doctrine. That's kind of a way of looking at things. It's very unsettling, but it's also like, yeah, that's actually how some things have to work I also like how, like, the Hail Mary is just a mishmash of, like, Russian and American tech. It's like, what's the stuff that's most proven that will last the longest? Like, put it on the ship. Well, yeah, because there was a whole subsection in this where we have to have centrifugal gravity and design spinning hulls. And it's like, why is that? Because we don't design lab equipment to work in 0 G. And the thing is, the lab equipment we have now has hundreds of millions of man hours. We know what's going to go right with it, what could go wrong, and how to fix it. If we design lab equipment for 0 G, that's just unproven tech. But then again, too, it's like, oh, we're going to make a spinning hull. It's like, well, how's that going to work? Well, which I remind me of Seven Eves, because they have a bunch of stuff like that in Seven Eves. Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of comparisons between this and Seven Eves, although Seven Eves is way more grim. Yeah, Seven Eves is essentially hopeless with a weird conclusion.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is dark, and when is this going to turn a corner? Oh, it's not. The mother of 3 and the mother of 5, their children fought and slaughtered each other, and it's like, yeah, humanity almost didn't make it. Oh, and then it turns out, yeah, people lived on Earth too, and those have a different mother, but everyone has the same, like, genetic makeup, and it's like, well, we've got to start screwing each other because we're going to have incest if we don't. It's all kinds of dark shit in Seven Eves. Basically, women are just rendered down to wombs. It's like, oh, okay. Didn't see this coming, but... Yeah, if you want the dark version of this book, read Seven Eves. Yeah. Although, like you said, the weirdest ending of a book. Oh, yeah. But I like it because it's like... for how dour and bad it gets, like this is like, oh, humanity made it, so I like that. Well, it's like if Neil Gaiman and, like, Stephen King wrote a science fiction book, like it hits all those points, and so yeah, this is okay. Let's we're up against our time wall, so let's just. All right. I'll call everybody back. All right. we're back. Danger's on. Colin's on. I'm
Yeah.
recording. So, yeah. So we get to the... Like I said, I don't want to summarize the whole plot of this book. So I want people to buy it. It's a good book. This guy writes good books. Sometimes I think he's a little too optimistic, but he writes books that are fun to read.
Yeah.
I think the ending of this book is...
Well, did you want to get in the dilemma about the casing that holds the what was it, the amoeba or astro amoeba or whatever that's called?
Oh, the thing that eats the astrophage?
Yeah.
What's that called? Promoeba?
Yeah.
Was that? Yeah.
Because I thought you wanted to talk about like the
Yes.
error they make in building the containers out of the what's the metal? I'm forgetting everything.
Xenonite.
Yeah, xenonite.
Made out of xenon gas that's hardened through some process that I don't pretend to understand. I don't know how you make a noble gas into a solid and it stays there at room temperature, but iridians. So, yeah. So anyway, they go to the nearest planet and almost kill themselves, making a drag chain to drag it through the atmosphere and figure out what's eating the astrophage. Why isn't Tau Ceti going dark? And so they do that, and that leads to a big dramatic thing about, again, where we realize our main character and even Rocky, they don't really understand orbital mechanics. And I mean, they understand it better than I ever would, but they still make some mistakes and almost destroy the ship. Because now Rocky has like a compression bubble that he's on the Hail Mary in, so he can float around, but he's like the boy in the bubble. So it's interesting. Read it. It's fun. It's kind of interesting lesson in orbital mechanics. It's like, why do I feel like I'm being tossed like laterally? Because there's gravity, but I'm always being pulled in a weird direction. It's okay. They knock a hole in the side of one of the astrophage tanks, and all the astrophage is leaving that tank with a huge energy release. So it's like pushing the ship in a very strange, like lateral orbit.
Yeah, because the astrophage see the light of the sun and they basically like go toward it, and that releases like a radiation, which is how the engine works. So when there's a hole in the engine, now you have it blasting sideways.
and you're talking about engines that blast. Okay, everyone who listens to this, I assume you watch The Expanse too. And you know what the Epstein drives can do to matter. And if you throw things in front of the Epstein drives, they incinerate. These are thousands of times more powerful than Epstein drives. So it's a superheated, like the heat of the sun firing out of the side of this thing as an energy release from the astrophage. So they ought to straighten the ship up, and that's fun. You can read it. So anyway, they find all this, because they weren't at Tau Ceti. They were at the nearest planet to Tau Ceti. That's where because remember, the astrophage go back and forth. That's what creates this, what's it called, the Russian name? The Nova Line or something?
Yeah.
Okay, so what they do is, because the astrophage need carbon dioxide to breathe. So they go to the sun, get the energy in our solar system. They were going to Venus. In Tau Ceti, they were going to this planet.
Petrova line.
Yeah, so that's what it's called. So anyway, so they're trying to find out, like, there must be something in the atmosphere of this planet that's orbiting Tau Ceti that eats the astrophage. So they rig up this thing on the end of a chain that's like, they make 200,000 links in this giant chain just to drag it in the atmosphere and try to catch this stuff. And so they find all kinds of organisms in this. There's astrophage and everything else. So they eventually isolate the one thing. And I was thinking about this while he was doing it. Like, oh, if he finds the shit that kills astrophage, it's going to spread all through his ship and eat all the astrophage, which is exactly what happened. So they find the Promoeba that eats the astrophage, and because he wasn't using a sterile lab environment, and Rocky was like, that was dumb. Because Rocky says he's dumb a lot. He tells Grace, he's like, that was dumb. Why are you doing this? You're not thinking clearly. That's dumb. And then he's like, well, what are your ideas, Rocky? He's like, I don't know. Let's think. It's like, we don't have a ton of time to think. So they have that back and forth. But it turns out the Promoeba eats all the astrophage in the ship, and includes shutting down the power systems and everything. Everything's powered by astrophage, because a couple of grams of this will power like an electrical generator for decades.
Yeah.
So it's like this perfect energy source, and so it's all destroyed because the Promoeba is just like, yeah, eat the fuck out of this. So it eats all the tanks and all the things, and it smells horrible, which is really visceral in this book, because it's like, oh, this is your only place to live. Like, you can't step outside or turn a fan on. and it's basically filled with what he called promoeba poop, because it just ate all the astrophage at once. But they're fine because they've got plenty of astrophage on Rocky's ship, and so they figure out, like, yeah, the promoeba is like wildly effective at destroying astrophage, but we can still have astrophage as long as we keep them separate, because we need that as a fuel source. So then they go back to Blip A, which is what Rocky is known as.
I thought it was going to be something weird where it was going to be like, because they have a problem where like they think they clear it out and then it happens again. And I thought it was gonna be something weird like the promoeba can live inside the human body, and that was the problem. Like he was the source of the problem, but that ended up being it.
No, see, this is something that how they clean it up and kill it finally, because they think they can just clean the tanks, is they have to use let me get my notes up.
Nitrogen.
They have to use nitrogen, which was Dr. Du Bois' chosen, because each of the astronauts that were going on this mission had a chosen form of suicide. So Yao Li, who's the Chinese character, he was the commander, he's the mission commander, and his chosen form of death is like a 9mm Chinese pistol. And because they're all going to die on this mission. So, and Ilyukna, who's the Russian, like she's like the engineer, her chosen form of death is she wants like heroin, but an increasingly fatal. She wants doctors to engineer it so she gets to be really high for like 2 hours and then die. And then Martin Du Bois, of course, because he's a weirdo, he's like, I choose nitrogen death because the body doesn't react when you breathe nitrogen. Because the only reason you suffocate and you start heaving is the presence of carbon dioxide. So if you don't feel that, you just slowly suffocate with nitrogen. You won't have any like urgency to breathe because. So they find out that nitrogen kills promoeba, and that was the guy who Grace had to sub in for. That was his form of death. And they mentioned that in the previous chapter to this. So it was kind of a thing for like, oh, this is the forms of death are going to come into this. And this is when I started imagining the dark ending. But so they figure out they can kill promoeba with nitrogen and just, expose it to space. So Rocky has, he can build these, he can give them plenty of astrophage because he has lots of it on his ship. But, so they build these giant tanks to transfer it and stuff. And then, so they rebuild astrophage, and Rocky takes some promoeba, but you find out that xenonite is like permeable to promoeba. So then when they get like, how far apart do they get? Like 18 months or something?
Yeah, something like
that.
He
sees Rocky's engines aren't firing properly anymore.
Yeah, because he's looking for the Petrova line because you can find one on a ship powered by astrophage.
Yeah.
And so he has to turn on the Petrova scope. He can see Rocky, and he didn't see it on the Petrova scope anymore. So he's like, oh, his engines are down.
So he turns around and heads for Rocky, which I guess they're not quite heading in opposite directions, but for all intents and purposes, they are.
Yeah.
So he turns around and finds Rocky, and of course, Rocky's so happy. It's like, you came to save me. But see, Grace has got this problem he's facing on his trip home. He can either go back into a coma, which has a high mortality rate, as we've seen, because 2 of the 3 people died as a result of it. They don't exactly explain why. It could have been that valve. It could have been because even the doctor that made the coma machines are like, yeah, only 2% of the population can actually do this because they're genetically resistant to dying during this coma. That's not really explained, but it's just a very small number of people, which is why Grace was the guy, because he's one of those people that's genetically resistant, which is why he was forced on the mission after the other guy killed himself with his girlfriend, and not on purpose, but
accident.
So he's facing a couple of problems here.
Well, also like to have them die, because then that gives him more food to be, so he can operate a lot, consciously for a little bit more.
But so he's got a problem now that he's gone back to Rocky, and it was the same problem he was facing going home. Because to him, it would only seem like 4 years relativistically, but it would be like 12 years real time. And even 4 years, the reason they put people in comas is because the Russians found out in the 70s that men and women or whoever in space for any extended period of time, they'll just start killing each other after a while. And they can't, no matter how much you psychologically screen people or whatever, if they're in space for years with each other, they will eventually find a way to kill each other for reasons, whatever the reasons are, because they just go insane. So, he can't do a trip like that. He doesn't know if he can do it awake, but he's going to run out of real food pretty quickly. And so all he's got left is like this food slurry, which they were fed in a coma, which is like not really palatable or very digestible because it was fed through a tube. You didn't actually chew the shit. So then he's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to even make it back to Earth. And he has a lot of time to think about it. And he's bored after like 18 weeks. He's going crazy. And so then he goes and saves Rocky. And then he's like, yeah, I'm going to starve to death on the way back to your planet because I can't eat your food, obviously. Because, there's the whole thing about iridian digestion and food you can read in this that's really weird and bizarre. Read the book, though. I'm not going to go into it. But because that's why taking a dump in Iridian society is like very eating and excreting waste are like secret things they don't want people to see. And there's a reason why. It's really weird. But it's even weird to them, and they do it. So
He shits out his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, because by the way, Iridians have no sex. They're hermaphrodites, and they have mates, but all they do is lay eggs together. That's like being a couple in Iridian culture. But anyway, so they figure out, Rocky's like, well, you can't eat any of my food. You don't have enough of your food left. And this is just to go to Iridia. Like, there's no going back to Earth at this point. So then he's like, well, he can eat.
Rocky says, can you eat the amoeba?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I can. And it's like, well, can you eat the amoeba until we figure out what to feed you? And it's like, yeah, I guess. So then they go back to Rocky's planet. And of course, eventually, and there's a big gap of time. And so eventually they find out, like, yeah, Grace is living under a dome on their planet. He's aging very rapidly because their gravity is much higher than Earth's. So like he has arthritis in his 50s. Like he's going downhill. And they've rebuilt the Hail Mary, and they said, we stocked it with food. You can go back, and he doesn't really want to. And
they make food based on his biology, so he's eating himself.
Yeah, they clone meat based on him because they never thought of cloning technology until he explained it to them. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So, yeah, he's eating hamburgers made out of himself, out of cloned meat, because he has to eat stuff like that because there's nothing native to that planet he can eat.
Yeah,
because he can't eat metals. Because also Iridians have mercury for blood, like that's their carrying agent. So it's like, yeah, this is totally alien. And so it kind of ends with like he's a school teacher for young Iridians on Iridia. He's kind of back to his old job, but he's walking around with a cane, and he's not doing well. He keeps thinking maybe I should go back, maybe I shouldn't, and then the story kind of ends there.
Yeah, well, the last thing they give him is that they turn a Petrovoscope or whatever on Earth's sun, and they said it's brighter now, so it probably means humanity pulled itself together to solve the problem.
Because they had these things on the ship called the Beetles, which also had their own individual drives, and he could send all the information back to Earth because it was always a one-way trip. But the Beetles would go back with all the scientific data and samples of So yeah, we assume that he solved Earth's problem.
Yeah,
we don't know. And this I thought was a missed opportunity. Because remember how the choices of suicide that they all had?
Yeah.
And Yao had a 9mm pistol with a full magazine. I thought he would go back to Earth, and then Earth is kind of fucked up but recognizable. Like, oh yeah, they solved their problems. And as soon as he walked off the ship, all the people that he knew were there. They were just much older, and he just emptied the magazine into Eva's Strat. They're making a movie out of this, so maybe they could do it. And then the camera just pulls out and away, and then we just roll the credits from like the intro to Event Horizon. Like it could have ended that way. It would have been really weird for an anti-weird book. But I thought all these methods of suicide, because he was even looking for Ilyukna's heroin because he was in pain. He was like, I don't know how they packaged it, but I remember that because he took her
vodka, right?
Yeah, he took her vodka, but he was looking for the heroin. Is like, I can use this as pain relief, even topically. Like he had some weird.
Yeah, because the medical robot arms on the board on the ship, like wouldn't give him more painkillers.
Yeah, because he stopped breathing. But he would figure out he could just change the time.
Yeah.
It's like, you are not due for a pill in 6 hours. Okay, computer, what is the time? 12 o'clock, Moscow Central. Advance the time 6 hours. And they did, and the computer like popped them a pill. But even he said, he's like, I'm going to suffocate if I keep taking them like this. But he got burned up saving Rocky and some, but that, again, I don't want to reveal everything from the book. But I thought an opportunity for a dark ending was missed, because like all the things that they chose to commit suicide with, like they have to play a part in the story.
Yeah.
And I figured Yao's 9mm would just be like, he'd finally get Strat. And it's like, am I a coward now? And then
that's why the sequel is Iridian's first school shooting. He kept
yeah,
picking up the gun for that
I'm
reason.
off for carapaces.
He's teaching him one more valuable lesson: guns in schools. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it was a good book though,
Yeah.
despite my desire for a darker ending.
My desire for it was a pretty dark book overall, I guess, but at the same time, I guess for a darker book, as in, I guess, I don't know what the market is for, it's the apocalypse if we fail. Because who wants to read that?
No, nobody does.
Overall.
Unless it's a series. No one wants to read a one-off book about the almost annihilation of humanity and it fails. Or actually, the annihilation succeeds. You'd read a series about that, not a one-off book. I don't know, that's the road, right? It's just like humanity ends in terrible, the grasp of violence.
I'm trying to remember, because I did read the book, I just didn't watch the movie all the way through. Now I'm just trying to remember if that's...
I think at the end his son finds a group of people that seem somewhat human. Like not evil, like just cannibals and stuff. Because, it's one of my tropes for the apocalypse is I'm going to be the character in The Road known as the well-fed cannibal. It's like, yeah, it's my role in the... But also the apocalypse as described in The Road is very unclear as to what happened. Because that seems like just a total annihilation of like all human systems. It's like, well, what did they have a lot more nuclear weapons in The Road than we do now? But it was just a way to propel a story along. But there seemed to be nothing left but moral quandaries. It's like, oh, this is miserable. But that's Cormac McCarthy. That's what he does. So. Anyway, Hail Mary, check it out.
Yeah, it was a Project Hail Mary or just Hail Mary?
Project Hail Mary.
Okay. Because, I think the title or the picture, the front page of the book, at least on Audible, the project part is buried and you just see the Hail Mary part, but I believe project is in there somewhere. I don't know. You actually have the physical book, Andrew. Does it say clearly Project
Hail Mary?
Okay.
Yeah.
Me over here with my archaic technology of a physical book.
Well, you'll have them after the EMP goes off.
Well, I guess I'm just more of a fan of physical media in any form, because then I don't have to have power to enjoy it most of the time, or nobody can take it away from me by deciding to pull the rights away. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Well, with Audible, any book you buy is yours forever, even if you aren't a member.
Well, what if they pull the rights, digital rights to the...
It's still available. They still have to make that available to you.
Rights free.
Because even on Amazon, I know that there's movies I bought that they no longer sell on Prime Video, but they still have to make it available to people who bought it through them. So it's still on their server, but they just can't allow new buys. Which there's a lot of stuff like that. There's all Xbox Live Arcade stuff is exactly like that, where it's there's a bunch of stuff that they don't sell anymore, but if you purchased it before they stopped selling it, it's still available to download from their server. The only thing I don't think came forward like that is that PT, that free horror game that was supposed to be the lead up to a new Silent Hill game by Hideo Kojima. So that was only available to download on your PS4 for a limited amount of time before they canceled that project and then got rid of that thing. So now there's a secondhand market for PS4s that have downloaded PT because there's no way to download it anymore. There's people figured out how to get it off there and put it on a server somewhere, but there's no easy way to do it.
All right. So that's all I have for this week.
Mm-hmm.
So this week for the American Greed Factory podcast, this is Nathan.
And this is Conlon.
Andrew.
Goodbye, America. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm not playing that this week. So.
Yeah, I know.